Have you noticed your iPhones getting pricier? Has your morning coffee become a luxury? Well, my friends, you can thank Mr. Trump's trade war for that. Back in 2018, he slapped tariffs on goods coming from China. You see, he wanted to bring back jobs to America, make things here again. A noble thought, but like a bad toupee in a windstorm, it all went a bit sideways. Those tariffs, they were like extra taxes on things we buy from China. And guess who ends up paying? You guessed it, we the people. That new iPhone, more expensive. That cup of joe? Yup, pricier too. But it wasn't just about phones and coffee, no sir. This trade war was like a bad Bollywood movie, full of drama and unintended consequences. It affected everything from the soybeans our farmers grow to the medicines we need. And China? They didn't just sit back and take it. Oh no, they hit back with their own tariffs on American goods. It became a tit for tat, a global game of economic chicken. And guess what? Nobody wins in a game of chicken, especially when the world economy is at stake. Now let's talk about why Trump did this. He said it was all about the trade deficit. That's the difference between how much we buy from other countries and how much they buy from us. We were buying a lot more from China than they were buying from us. Trump thought this was unfair. He wanted to protect American jobs, especially in manufacturing. He believed that by making Chinese goods more expensive, people would buy American-made products instead. But things didn't quite go as planned. Those tariffs, they hurt American businesses too. Companies that relied on parts from China saw their costs go up. Some even had to lay off workers, the very opposite of what Trump wanted. And China? They're like the clever student who always has a backup plan. They started doing more business with other countries in Southeast Asia, for example. They even invested heavily in those countries, building factories and infrastructure. Let's talk about the ripple effect of this trade war. Imagine throwing a stone in a pond. The ripples spread out, affecting everything in their path. That's what happened with the tariffs. Our farmers, the backbone of America, they got hit hard. China was a huge market for their soybeans and other crops. When China slapped tariffs on those products, our farmers lost a lot of business. Some even had to declare bankruptcy, and it wasn't just agriculture. Manufacturing, technology, pharmaceuticals, you name it, they all felt the pinch. Prices went up, businesses struggled, and the global economy took a hit. Remember Mark Cuban, the billionaire owner of the Dallas Mavericks? He warned about the impact on pharmaceuticals. He said that tariffs could lead to higher prices for essential medicines, even shortages. Imagine that, folks, not being able to afford the medicines you need. Now let's talk about Southeast Asia. Remember how China started doing more business with them? Well, that's because Southeast Asian countries became an alternative source for goods. Companies started moving their factories from China to countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia. This shift in supply chains had a big impact on Southeast Asia. It created jobs and boosted their economies, but it also made them more dependent on trade with the US and vulnerable to our trade policies. And China? They're still a major player in the global economy. They're investing heavily in technology, infrastructure, and innovation. They're also strengthening their ties with other countries, becoming a global power player. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Well, it's a bit like a game of chess. Trump made his move with the tariffs, and it set off a chain reaction across the globe. The pieces are still moving, and the outcome is still uncertain. But one thing's for sure, the world of trade is a complicated game, and there are no easy answers. Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign resonated with a powerful slogan, "Make America Great Again." This resonated with many Americans, especially those who felt left behind by globalization. Trump promised to bring back manufacturing jobs. He said that China was stealing American jobs. He vowed to renegotiate trade deals. Trump's message struck a chord in states hit hard by factory closures. He promised to restore America to its former glory. He blamed unfair trade practices for the decline of American manufacturing. His promises appealed to blue-collar workers and those nostalgic for a bygone era. Trump's focus on trade, particularly with China, became central to his economic agenda. He accused China of manipulating its currency. He said this gave them an unfair advantage in global trade. He threatened to impose tariffs on Chinese goods. He wanted to reduce the trade deficit between the two countries. Trump's promises ignited hope and anxiety. Supporters believed he would deliver on his commitments. Critics feared protectionist policies would harm the economy. The world watched as Trump prepared to take office, eager to see how his rhetoric would translate into action. Upon taking office, Trump wasted no time in shaking up global trade. He imposed tariffs on goods from China, Canada, and Mexico. He argued that these tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs. He accused these countries of unfair trade practices. Trump's tariffs sparked retaliation. China responded with tariffs on American goods. Canada and Mexico followed suit. This tit-for-tat escalation raised concerns about a trade war. The business community expressed worries about the impact on their operations. Trump's tariff threats extended beyond China, Canada, and Mexico. He threatened to impose tariffs on cars imported from Europe. He even floated the idea of withdrawing from the World Trade Organization. These actions created uncertainty in the global market. Trump's use of tariffs as a negotiating tool drew criticism. Some experts argued that tariffs would harm American consumers. They pointed out that tariffs often lead to higher prices. Others questioned the effectiveness of tariffs in bringing back manufacturing jobs. They argued that automation, not trade, was the primary driver of job losses in manufacturing. The impact of Trump's tariffs rippled through the American economy. Consumers felt the pinch of higher prices on imported goods. Businesses faced increased costs for raw materials and components. Supply chains, already complex, were disrupted. The agricultural sector was hit particularly hard. China, a major importer of American soybeans, imposed retaliatory tariffs. This led to a surplus of soybeans in the U.S., driving down prices for farmers. The Trump administration provided billions of dollars in aid to farmers hurt by the trade war. Manufacturers relying on imported components also faced challenges. The tariffs raised their production costs. Some companies passed these costs on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Others absorbed the costs, squeezing their profit margins. The tariffs also had unintended consequences. For instance, the tariffs on steel and aluminum imports led to job losses in industries that use these materials. The tariffs on washing machines resulted in higher prices for consumers, with little impact on domestic production. Expert opinions on the long-term impact of Trump's trade policies are divided. Some argue that the tariffs will ultimately benefit the American economy. They believe that the tariffs will force companies to relocate manufacturing back to the U.S. They also point to the potential for the U.S. to negotiate more favorable trade deals. However, many economists are skeptical. They argue that the tariffs will harm economic growth. They predict that the tariffs will lead to higher prices for consumers and businesses. They also worry that the tariffs will damage global trade and investment. The uncertainty surrounding Trump's trade policies has created anxiety for businesses and investors. The lack of clarity makes it difficult for companies to plan for the future. The volatile trade environment has also contributed to market volatility. Only time will tell what the full impact of Trump's trade policies will be. However, one thing is certain: the global trading system has been fundamentally altered. The era of free trade is over. The world is now navigating a new era of trade tensions and protectionism. In March 2018, Trump made his first big move. He announced tariffs, 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum. His reason? National security. But this was more than protection. It was the first strike in a global trade war. China hit back fast. They placed tariffs on U.S. soybeans, pork, and more. Farmers started losing money, prices dropped, crops went unsold. Harley-Davidson said it might move production overseas, and even whiskey got hit with new tariffs in Europe. Yes, even Elon Musk felt it. Tesla was suddenly paying more for parts, and exporting cars to China became expensive. By mid-2018, things exploded. Trump imposed tariffs on over $250 billion of Chinese goods: electronics, furniture, machinery, clothing. Prices went up fast. China responded. Apple warned of rising costs. Amazon and retailers sounded the alarm. Consumers felt the pain. Phones, laptops, and even toys became more expensive. The stock market dipped. Global investors panicked. Decades-old supply chains were crumbling. And Elon Musk, he made a big move, launching Tesla's Gigafactory in Shanghai to avoid tariffs and keep growing. Then came 2020. COVID hit the world. Factories shut down, shipping slowed, supply chains broke. Tariffs made it worse. Hospitals couldn't get medical supplies. Small businesses couldn't stock their shelves. Essential goods became harder to find. In January 2020, Trump signed a Phase 1 trade deal with China, but most tariffs stayed in place. The trade deficit? Still massive. Did it work? That depends who you ask. Some jobs came back, some factories reopened, but prices were rising, and trust in global trade was broken. When Joe Biden stepped into the Oval Office in 2021, the echoes of his predecessor's trade wars were still reverberating across the globe. Donald Trump's tariffs, particularly those levied on goods from China, had upended global trade and ignited a fierce debate about their effectiveness. Many expected Biden to swiftly dismantle these tariffs, viewing them as detrimental to American businesses and consumers. Yet, in a move that surprised many, Biden chose to maintain a significant portion of Trump's tariffs, arguing that they provided leverage in negotiations with China. This decision marked the beginning of Biden's own distinct approach to trade, one that sought to balance economic interests with a desire to confront China's trade practices. The decision to retain tariffs was not made lightly. Biden and his team recognized the potential downsides of continuing Trump's trade policies. They understood that tariffs could lead to higher prices for American consumers, hurting households already grappling with economic uncertainty. There were also concerns that tariffs could disrupt supply chains, creating headaches for businesses and potentially leading to shortages of essential goods. However, the Biden administration ultimately calculated that the potential benefits of maintaining tariffs, particularly in terms of gaining concessions from China on issues like intellectual property theft and forced technology transfer, outweighed these risks. The decision to retain tariffs was met with mixed reactions. Some lauded Biden for taking a tough stance on China, arguing that it was long overdue for the United States to push back against what they saw as unfair trade practices. Others, however, expressed concerns that the tariffs would ultimately harm the American economy more than they would benefit it. They argued that the costs of tariffs would be borne by American consumers and businesses, while China would likely find ways to retaliate and mitigate the impact on its own economy. This debate over the wisdom of tariffs would continue to rage throughout Biden's presidency, reflecting the deep divisions that existed within the United States about how best to approach trade with China. The early days of the Biden administration were thus marked by a sense of continuity when it came to trade policy. While Biden may have disagreed with Trump's approach on many issues, he seemed to recognize that the trade war had shifted the dynamics of the US-China relationship in a way that could not be easily reversed. The tariffs, once seen as a temporary measure, had become a defining feature of the bilateral relationship, one that would continue to shape economic and geopolitical calculations for years to come. As Biden settled into office, it became clear that he was not simply inheriting Trump's tariffs, but also the complex web of economic and political tensions that they had unleashed. Navigating this landscape would require a delicate balancing act, one that would test Biden's diplomatic skills and his ability to forge a new path forward on trade. While Biden's decision to maintain some of Trump's tariffs signaled a degree of continuity in U.S. trade policy, it was not a wholesale embrace of his predecessor's approach. Biden sought to differentiate himself by embedding trade within a broader foreign policy strategy that emphasized alliances, multilateralism, and a focus on values. He recognized that the global trading system was evolving, with new challenges emerging from climate change, technological disruption, and the rise of digital trade. In response, Biden sought to craft a new trade policy that would address these challenges while also advancing American interests. Central to Biden's trade strategy was a commitment to promoting domestic manufacturing and creating jobs in the United States. He believed that a strong manufacturing base was essential for American economic competitiveness and national security. To achieve this goal, Biden implemented a Buy American policy that favored American companies in government procurement contracts. He also increased funding for research and development, aiming to spur innovation and maintain America's technological edge. These policies were designed to create a more favorable environment for American businesses and workers, but they also raised concerns among some trading partners who viewed them as protectionist measures that could distort global trade. Beyond bolstering domestic manufacturing, Biden also sought to leverage trade policy to advance his administration's ambitious climate agenda. He recognized that climate change posed an existential threat and believed that the United States had a moral obligation to lead the global effort to combat it. As part of this effort, Biden imposed targeted tariffs on imports of Chinese electric cars and solar panels, arguing that these industries were heavily subsidized by the Chinese government and that the tariffs were necessary to level the playing field for American companies. This move was met with mixed reactions, with some praising Biden for taking a stand against China's unfair trade practices in a sector critical to addressing climate change, while others expressed concerns that the tariffs could raise prices for consumers and slow down the transition to clean energy. Biden's trade policy was thus characterized by a blend of pragmatism and idealism. He recognized the need to be tough on China and to protect American jobs and industries, but he also believed that trade could be a force for good in the world, promoting economic growth, raising living standards, and addressing global challenges like climate change. This nuanced approach to trade reflected the complexity of the global economy in the 21st century, one where economic interests were increasingly intertwined with geopolitical considerations, and where the United States faced the challenge of balancing its role as a global leader with its domestic priorities.
So where are we now? It's 2025. Tariffs from 2018 still here. US-China tensions still high. Consumers still paying more. Electronics, furniture, even cars. Inflation made everything worse. Businesses, they're shifting production to India, Vietnam, and Mexico. This isn't just trade, it's your wallet, your job, your everyday life. So, did Trump's gamble protect America, or trap it in a new kind of war? Is Biden fixing things, or just reshuffling the board? In part 2, we break down the current global trade moves and where the world is heading now. Want part 2 early? Comment tariff war below. And don't forget to like, follow, and share, because this story is just getting started.